with the lesson. Um, okay, so just yeah, it's slang for please. Okay, so as you guys know, I've been pursuing. When I decided to switch to drawing from imagination, I switched from kind of like being able pretty confidently to copy reference. But one of the things that I discovered was that, I would tell people that I can draw, but I felt like I was lying because there was a part of me that knew that I can't really draw from imagination. Like I would imagine that somebody who can really draw can just sit there and put something on the page and doesn't have to rely on looking at something, and that set me off on the path, the rabbit hole of trying to find out how to do this thing effectively. And so um, everything here is kind of like what I thought are the most important points in regards to what mindset you should have. So it's based on things that I have struggled with and how I learned to think in order to combat those struggles. And then the practice, the way that I found the most effective to practice, because nobody really talks about it. And when people talk about it, it's not very structured, or if it is, then it's something that really is what makes sense for them. And I guess it's going to be the same thing here. So whatever I do say here, you might think that doesn't suit you. So I guess the first rule is, if what I'm saying does not feel like it suits your personality or what you want to achieve, then it might not be relevant for you. So please feel free to sort of like decide what to take from what I'm going to say to you, because none of this is a final verdict on how you should behave as a person who wants to draw, And I think one of the biggest takeaways is that you should tailor your own journey to yourself. That, like, if there's one thing that you need to um that you need to that I encourage you to do take away from this, is that, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you learn and who you learn from. You have to make sure that it actually, it needs to feel good in your body to pursue it. It needs to feel like, you're excited about what you're going to do, and so forth. So the things that I want to talk about today, kind of like 2 and 3 is a bonus. First is more of like a mindset section where, it's going to be more about how do you combat the task of doing something consistently for a long time without burning out, and sort of like still having motivation to do it somehow. And the second is what I believe you need to practice, like really breaking it down, really condensing it to the only things that are truly essential, that I think, if somebody, like, at the end, again, you will find for yourself what makes the most sense to you in terms of what you actually feel like you want to and need to practice. But if somebody were to say something to educate me on practicing for the purpose of them being able to execute something from imagination, it would be this. All right, so let's start with mindset. And the first thing that I want to talk about when I refer to mindset, and the first thing that I had to sort of like learn for myself, and maybe for the first time in my life, because I was never very good at that, was to set a goal that spans years, not weeks and not months. And sure, you can set mini goals that are daily or weekly or monthly, but your agenda should be, I want to be very good at this 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? Because I think a lot of, and especially young people, they try to look at their progress sort of like on a week to week basis or on a day to day basis. And that sort of makes sense during the first couple of weeks, because you go from knowing nothing to knowing something. And so like maybe your first year has a lot of discoveries built into it, but I think you'll quickly discover that after a while, progress seems to stall. And so um, people who are impatient quit at that point. Now, because this is drawing, people are making even worse mistakes. And what I mean is, because you have lines on the page, it feels like, all I'm trying to do is make this line go to be in the right spot. And that shouldn't be so difficult. And so what I always do is I equate it to learning a language. See, if you were studying Japanese, this is my question, like what level would you expect to reach after a year? Right? So ask yourself, like answer that question. And I think most rational people will say, probably, be like conversational to some extent, maybe have very basic conversations with people that I meet, tell them my name, I want to go here. How do I get there? I want to buy this. How much is it? And so forth. Like this is what you can expect to learn if you're learning a language after a year. But for some reason with drawing, it's not the same. And I think part of it is just that it's a very visual thing. It's like, I know what it's supposed to look like, I think, so why is it not coming out? Whereas if you're studying something like language or music, you kind of like understand in a more natural manner that you have to memorize a lot of stuff. Like, vocabulary and rules, and especially vocabulary. People don't understand that there's vocabulary that you have to memorize. So you never actually draw. You're not making stuff up. You're drawing things that you already know. So we'll get there in a second. Second thought is that you should check in with yourself over months and not even weeks, and basically much less than you think you should. So a good rule is to check your progress every month or every 3 months if you find that you're a very impatient person, because a lot of the process is kind of like feeling like nothing is happening. And if you're someone who is quick to sort of like listen to their emotions and think that their emotions are right, which is being frustrated, and kind of like taking your frustration as a given and saying to yourself, well, if I'm frustrated, then it must mean that I'm not doing it right. And you don't have those guardrails that you put for yourself of, I only check once a month. Then again, you are likely to do something like quit studying the hobby that you wanted so much to get better at. Third thing here is, and I think I said that in a video, but it's about focusing on daily consistency rather than intensity. And this is where we fetishize stories. Like I don't know if you guys know about John Coltrane, but I used to study jazz music. And you have stories about grandmasters like John Coltrane. He was like playing his saxophone all day long, and he was like bleeding from his lips, and he was falling asleep with his saxophone, and all that stuff. And you have Kim Jong-gi pulling like 16-hour days and all that stuff. And so it feels like, I can't really achieve anything meaningful if I don't practice, if I don't go as hard as the stories um, about those guys. But the thing that happens is you don't even know um, if the stories are true at the end of the day. Moreover, you're not the person in that story, so your capacity might be different. So now it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking, I don't do 4 hours a day, I don't do 5 hours a day, I don't do 6 hours a day, so it's not worth it. A kind of an all or nothing thinking. So my advice to you right now is that you better drop that, because what will happen is that, again, people who go very, very hard, especially at the beginning. So you see, what you have to understand is that going hard is also only possible once you've built tolerance. So, for example, if you go to the gym, you can't lift 100 pounds with your bicep on the first day. Like, it doesn't work, right? But if you're a bodybuilder and you've been doing it for 10 years, maybe you could. If you go to the gym for the first time, you can't do a 2-hour session. You do 30 minutes. And so what happens is you have to understand, especially at first, when you don't know much, you will feel you will feel almost like physically tired after a practice session. So, so first you have to understand that and sort of like not fall into the trap of trying to like get super cutthroat about it right off the bat, because that will lead you to like, yeah, just you'll quit so fast, you'll burn out so fast. But even after that, if you sort of like get out of the range that you're able to truly thrive in, right? If you tire yourself out, you will kill your own motivation, you will quit, you will burn out. And as I said, this thing takes years. It doesn't take months. And in order to run this marathon, you have to really sort of like go easy on yourself. I don't know if you've ever seen those charts where you see like, a glass of water over a month, and you see that sometimes it's like half full, and sometimes it's like a quarter full, and sometimes it has just a bit, and sometimes it's full. And my suggestion is that you really focus on showing up, having that habit of drawing and showing up for it, rather than being very intense with it. I just can't stress it enough, because even if you think about this, even if you have a very bad period, let's say you're blocked, you don't want to do it, you don't care about the goal that you had, then you go down to sort of like the bare minimum. So let's say that you decided that your bare minimum is 5 minutes, and so now you can do those 5 minutes, and that's better than nothing. And I can tell you about myself that I had, very long periods where I went down to 5 minutes for like a month or 2 months. And it's those 5 minutes that made sure that when my sort of like my when my spirit came back, I could go back to like 1 hour and 2 hours and 3 hours and so forth. But if I didn't keep doing those 5 minutes during the bad times, I would probably have quit for good. Okay, let's see. What else? Okay, draw things that you like. So for much the same reason that you shouldn't force yourself to spend long hours beyond your actual capacity, you shouldn't force yourself to draw things that you don't like just because xyphid said that it's good for you, right? You'll create a situation again where you're stressing yourself too much to the point that you can't really enjoy it. So, unlike what your teacher told you, enjoying what you do is one of the fundamental rules of succeeding at it. So if you feel like every practice session is a drag, you're doing it wrong. And this happens a lot to people. It happens to me a lot where I get fixated on thinking, maybe I found somebody's method of achieving a certain thing, and then I get sort of like fixated on the notion that my